1 billion years ago, Earth was an alien world, unrecognizable to the human eye. The sky glowed a faint orange, streaked with red hues from a methane-rich atmosphere, starved of oxygen. The oceans, if they could be called that, were vast, shallow expanses, shimmering under the dim light of a younger, weaker sun. There were no trees, no birds, no roars of beasts. Life, if it could be called that, existed in the form of microscopic organisms, hidden in rock crevices or drifting in warm, mineral-laden waters. The land was not lush fields or towering mountains, but barren expanses of rock, scoured by wind and occasional acid rains. On a vast basalt plateau, part of what would millions of years later form the supercontinent Rodinia, lay a shallow lake, its surface gleaming with an eerie green from the cyanobacteria that thrived within. This lake was the heart of an untold story, a tale of primordial life, of tiny but resilient creatures, and of a planet shaping its own destiny. In the warm waters of the lake, amid bubbles of methane rising from the depths, a thin mat of cyanobacteria clung together, forming a living tapestry. They had no consciousness, no names, but for the sake of this tale, let us call them Calith, a species of ancient microbes born from chance chemical reactions in Earth's cradle. Calith did not think, but they existed, soaking up the faint sunlight and converting carbon dioxide and water into energy, releasing tiny molecules of oxygen as an unintended byproduct. The Calith mat spread across the lake's floor, vying for space with other microbial colonies, those that thrived on sulfur or methane. Their struggle was not one of blood or conquest, but a slow, centuries-long race to claim resources and territory. Calith held an edge. Their rudimentary photosynthesis allowed them to harness sunlight, a feat beyond many of their rivals. Yet the lake was no paradise. Storms of acidic rain swept down from the sky, eroding rock and disrupting the delicate balance of their habitat. Temperatures swung wildly, scorching by day and freezing by night when the sun vanished. At the heart of the Calith mat, a subtle change emerged. A cluster of microbes, through a random error in cell division, developed a thicker cell wall, better equipped to withstand the acid surges. They did not know they were changing, but this shift would shape the lake's future. These new microbes, which we'll call Calith, began to spread, outcompeting their weaker kin. If an entity, a timeless observer, stood on the lake's shore, they would witness an alien spectacle. No sounds filled the air, save the whistle of wind over barren rock and the faint pop of gas bubbles breaking the water's surface. The sky, crimson at dusk, reflected on the lake, painting a surreal tableau. Methane clouds drifted lazily, occasionally torn by lightning that carried the acrid scent of sulfur. No life was apparent to the untrained eye, but a closer look would reveal the lake's pulse. The microbial mat swayed gently with the currents, as if alive, fighting, evolving. This invisible observer, if capable of feeling, would sense a planet both harsh and brimming with potential. Earth was not still. It moved, not just through quakes that shook the plateau or volcanic eruptions on the horizon, but through the minute changes in the lake. Each oxygen molecule Calith released, though infinitesimal, was quietly accumulating, setting the stage for a revolution that would reshape Earth's face hundreds of millions of years later. Not far from the lake, on a cracked, arid plain, another form of life persisted. These were anaerobic microbes, feeding on sulfur venting from geological fissures. Let us call them Sathar. Unlike Calith, Sathar shunned sunlight. Thriving in the chemical richness of Earth's volcanic underbelly, their colonies formed crusty, yellowish patches on the rocks, pulsing faintly as they metabolized sulfur compounds, so they were resilient, adapted to the harsh, oxygen-poor conditions of the plain. But their world was shrinking. The lake Basar, fed by underground springs, was slowly expanding, its waters seeping into the cracks where Star dwelled, where Calith thrived. Oxygen followed, a poison to Sathar's delicate chemistry. The two species did not know each other, but their existence was a clash of incompatible worlds, Calith's oxygen, a waste product, was an invisible weapon, creeping into Sathar's domain and disrupting their metabolic balance. Yet Sathar were not defenseless. Some bio, through their own random mutations, developed a tolerance for low oxygen levels. These Sathar Prime, as we might name them, clung to their rocky strongholds, resisting the encroaching lake. Their struggle was silent, invisible, yet as fierce as any battle in later eras. The plain became a frontier, where water and rock, oxygen and sulfur, Calith and Sathar waged their slow war. The basalt plateau itself was a character in this drama. Forged in ancient volcanic upheavals, its surface was a mosaic of cracks and fissures, sculpted by eons of wind and acid rain. Beneath it, tectonic forces churned, pushing molten rock closer to the surface. Every few decades, tremors shook the plateau, sending ripples through the lake and stirring the microbial mats. These quakes were not mere disruptions. They brought new minerals to the surface, feeding both Calith and Sathar, while also reshaping their battleground. One such tremor, stronger than most, struck as the lake's waters lapped at the edge of Sathar's plain. The ground split, releasing a surge of sulfur-rich gas that bubbled into the lake. For Sathar, this was a boon, fueling their growth. For Calith, it was a challenge. The influx of sulfur clouded the water, blocking sunlight and starving the cyanobacteria. Calith hard, with their thicker cell walls, fared better than their kin, but even they struggled to maintain their foothold. In the aftermath, the lake's chemistry shifted. The water grew murkier, its green sheen dulled. Calith's oxygen output slowed, giving Sathar a chance to reclaim lost ground. The invisible observer, watching this unfold, might see the lake as a microcosm of Earth itself, a place where life, chemistry, and geology danced in a delicate, ever-shifting balance. Unseen by any creature, a subtle shift was brewing. Calith hard, through their relentless spread, were producing more oxygen than their ancestors. It was a slow process, measured in millennia, but each molecule they released lingered in the water, some escaping to the atmosphere. This oxygen, toxic to many of Earth's early inhabitants, was a harbinger of change. It reacted with methane in the air, gradually thinning the orange haze that cloaked the planet. The sky, though still alien, was growing clearer. This was no sudden upheaval, but a quiet revolution. Calith Hard's dominance in the lake was not just a victory over Sathar or their weaker kin. It was a step toward transforming Earth itself. The oxygen they produced would, over eons, pave the way for new forms of life, ones that could harness this gas for energy. But for now, the lake remained a battleground, its waters a crucible where life's earliest experiments played out. As dusk fell, the plateau grew still, save for the faint hum of wind and the distant rumble of a volcano. The lake, reflecting the fading crimson sky, seemed almost serene, yet beneath its surface, Calith and Sathar continued their silent struggle, each adapting, evolving, surviving. The invisible observer, if they turned their gaze to the horizon, would see a world in flux, volcanoes spewing ash, storms brewing over distant seas, and the faint glow of microbial life in countless other lakes and fissures. This was Earth, 1 billion years ago, a planet of rock, water, and chemistry, where life was a fragile experiment, teetering on the edge of oblivion, yet driven by an unstoppable urge to endure. The story of Calith and Sathar was but one thread in a vast tapestry, woven by forces too slow and vast for any mind to grasp, but it was a beginning, a spark that would, in time, ignite a world. The basalt plateau, scarred and unyielding, stood as a silent witness to the slow drama unfolding in the shallow lake and its surrounding plains. 1 billion years ago, Earth was a crucible of chemistry and chance, where life's earliest forms waged their quiet wars. The lake, home to the cyanobacteria Calith, shimmered with a faint green under the orange-tinted sky, its waters a battleground where oxygen and sulfur clashed. Nearby, The sulfur-dependent Sathar clung to their rocky domain, resisting the creeping influence of Calith's toxic byproduct. The tremor that had recently shaken the plateau, releasing sulfur into the lake, had tilted the balance, but the story was far from over. In the wake of the tremor, the lake's waters had grown murky, choked with sulfur compounds that dimmed the sunlight Calith relied upon. The cyanobacteria's vibrant mat, once a sprawling tapestry, now frayed at its edges, the weaker Calith strains withered, their cells rupturing under the strain of the altered chemistry. Yet Calith hard, with their thicker cell walls, endured. They did not plan or strive, but their resilience was a force of its own, carved by countless generations of survival. Deep within the mat, another mutation stirred. A cluster of Calith hard developed an enzyme, crude but effective, that allowed them to neutralize small amounts of sulfur in the water. These Calith prime, as we might call them, were not numerous, but their emergence marked a turning point. Slowly, they spread through the mat, their sulfur tolerance allowing them to reclaim patches of the lake floor lost to the tremor's aftermath. The water began to clear, the green sheen returning as Calith Prime's photosynthesis resumed with vigor. The invisible observer, hovering over the lake, would see this as a quiet triumph. The lake was fighting back, not with intent, but with the relentless logic of evolution. Each Calith Prime cell that divided was a step toward restoring the lake's balance, pushing back against the sulfur tide. But the victory was fragile, the plateau's geology was restless, and the Sthar, emboldened by the recent sulfur surge, were not yet defeated. On the cracked plain beyond the lake, Sathar's yellowish colonies pulsed with renewed energy. The tremor's sulfur-rich gases had fueled their growth, allowing Sathar Prime, the oxygen-tolerant strain, to spread across new fissures. These microbes thrived in the absence of light, their metabolism a dance of chemical reactions that consumed sulfur and released faint traces of hydrogen sulfide, a gas that hung heavy in the air above the plain. To Sathar, the lake's expansion was a threat, its oxygen-laden waters a creeping poison. Yet they had no choice but to endure, their existence tied to the rocky crevices they called home. The plain was a harsher world than the lake. Winds howled across its surface, carrying abrasive dust that scoured Sathar's colonies. Acid rains, more frequent here than over the lake, eroded the rock, exposing new sulfur veins, but also washing away weaker star clusters. Sathar Prime's oxygen tolerance gave them an edge, but it came at a cost. Their growth was slower than their ancestors, their energy diverted to maintaining their defenses against the lake's influence. In one deep fissure, a new adaptation emerged. A small group of Sathar Prime began to form denser, layered colonies, their cells stacking into crude structures that shielded the inner layers from oxygen and acid. These star stack, as we might name them, were an anomaly, a step toward complexity. In a world of single-celled simplicity, the invisible observer might marvel at this, seeing in star stack the faint echo of structures that would, eons later, define multicellular life. Above the plateau, the sky was a restless canvas. The methane haze, once a thick veil, was thinning, pierced by the oxygen Calith released. The change was imperceptible to any creature, but it altered the planet's rhythm. The orange glow softened, and at midday, the sky took on a bluish tint, alien to the Earth of 1 billion years ago. Storms grew fiercer, their lightning more frequent, as oxygen reacted with methane, sparking chemical chaos in the atmosphere. One such storm loomed on the horizon, its clouds heavy with acid and water. As it approached, the lake's surface rippled, disturbed by gusts that carried the scent of sulfur and ozone. The storm struck with fury, its rains hissing as they met the hot basalt. In the lake, Calith Prime's mat held firm, their sulfur-neutralizing enzymes buffering the acid's bite. But on the plain, Sathar Stack faced a trial. The rain flooded their fissures, washing away loose colonies and testing their layered defences. Those that survived emerged stronger, their structures more tightly bound. The storm passed, leaving the plateau glistening under a rare, clear sky. The invisible observer, gazing upward, might sense the planet's pulse quickening. The oxygen, the storms, the shifting chemistry, they were threads in a tapestry of change. Woven by the interplay of life and geology, Earth was not just a stage, it was a player, its forces shaping Caliph and Sathar as much as they shaped it. The lake's expansion, slow but relentless, continued to encroach on Star's plain. Underground springs fed its growth, their waters carrying Calith's oxygen into the cracks where Starstack dwelled. The frontier between lake and plain was a shifting zone, neither fully Calith's nor Sathar's. Here, the water was brackish, its chemistry a blend of sulfur and oxygen, a no-man's land where only the hardiest survived. In this frontier, a strange phenomenon emerged. Some Calith prime cells, carried by currents into the brackish zone, began to interact with Starstack. The two species did not meet in any meaningful sense, but their chemistries collided. Calith's oxygen disrupted Star's metabolism, while Star's hydrogen sulfide slowed Calith's photosynthesis. Yet, in rare cases, this clash produced unexpected results. A few Cathar cells began to exchange genetic fragments, their membranes fusing in fleeting encounters. These hybrid cells, Calith-Sar, were unstable, most dying within hours, but a handful persisted, their mixed traits allowing them to survive in the frontier's harsh conditions. The invisible observer might see Calith-Sar as a bridge between worlds, a fragile experiment in cooperation amid competition. These hybrids were not a new species, not yet, but their existence hinted at possibilities beyond the lake and plain. They were a whisper of life's potential to adapt, to create, to defy the odds. Beneath the plateau, the planet's restless heart beat stronger. Tectonic forces, grinding against the basalt crust, pushed magma upward, heating the springs that fed the lake. The water grew warmer, accelerating Calith Prime's metabolism and boosting their oxygen production. But the heat also stirred new vents on the plain, releasing sulfur gases that fueled Starstack's growth. The plateau was a battleground, not just of life, but of Earth itself, its forces amplifying the clash between lake and plain. A deep rumble signaled another quake, this one stronger than the last tremor. Cracks widened across the plain, swallowing southern colonies, but exposing new sulfur-rich veins. In the lake, the quake stirred sediment, clouding the water and burying parts of Calith Prime's mat. Yet the survivors adapted, their sulfur-neutralizing enzymes allowing them to endure. The quake was a reset, leveling the field but favoring those who could adapt. Calith Prime's oxygen production, though slow, was relentless. The lake's waters, once oxygen-poor, now carried enough to alter the atmosphere above. Methane levels dropped, the sky's orange haze fading further. The change was incremental, but its effects rippled. On the plain, Starstack's hydrogen sulfide output struggled to counter the oxygen tide, their colonies shrinking under its pressure. The invisible observer might see this as a tipping point. Calith Prime's quiet revolution was reshaping not just the lake, but the planet. The oxygen they produced was a spark that would, in time, ignite new forms of life. For now, the frontier remained a crucible, where Calith, Sathar, and their hybrids battled for survival. As night fell, the plateau grew still, save for the wind and distant volcanic glow. The lake, its surface calm, pulsed with Calith Prime's life. On the plain, Starstack clung to their fissures, their layered forms a testament to resilience. The horizon shimmered with lightning, hinting more storms, more change. This was Earth, 1 billion years ago, a world of flux, where life endured, driven by a blind urge to persist. Calith and Sathar's story was a thread in a vast, unfolding epic, shaped by forces vast and slow. The invisible observer, gazing out, would see a planet alive, poised on the edge of transformation. The basalt plateau, a scarred expanse under an orange-tinted sky, bore witness to the ceaseless dance of life 1 billion years ago. The shallow lake, home to the cyanobacteria Calith prime, shimmered with a faint green. Its waters a crucible where oxygen reshaped the world. Beyond the lake, on the cracked plain, Hastar stack clung to their sulfur-rich fissures, their layered colonies a testament to resilience. The frontier between lake and plain was a battleground of chemistry, where Calith's oxygen clashed with Star's hydrogen sulfide and fragile hybrids. Calith-Sar hinted at new possibilities. The recent quake had stirred the plateau, leveling the playing field, but favouring the adaptable. Now, as the planet's restless pulse quickened, the story of this ancient Earth unfolded further. The lake, Sofam, fed by warm springs, had regained its clarity after the quake's turmoil. Calith prime, with their sulfur-neutralizing enzymes, dominated the lake's floor, their mat thicker and more vibrant than ever. The oxygen they produced bubbled upward, some escaping into the atmosphere, thinning the methane haze that cloaked the sky. This was no sudden shift, but a slow crescendo, each molecule a note in a symphony that would echo for eons. Within the mat, a new mutation emerged. A cluster of Calith prime developed a slight variation in their photosynthetic machinery, allowing them to capture sunlight more efficiently even in the lake's murkier depths. These Calith lux, as we might call them, thrived where others faltered, their cells glowing faintly under the dim sun. Their spread was slow but relentless, pushing Calith prime's mat deeper into the lake and closer to the frontier where Star Stack held sway. The invisible observer, peering into the lake, would see a world in flux. The water, once a uniform green, now shimmered with patches of brighter hue where Calith lux dominated. The lake was not just a habitat, it was a laboratory, where chance mutations and environmental pressures sculpted life's earliest experiments. But the lake's expansion brought it ever closer to Star's domain, intensifying the silent war. On the cracked plain, Sadar Stack's layered colonies stood as fortresses against the encroaching lake. The quake had opened new fissures, releasing sulfur gases that fueled their growth, but it had also flooded parts of their domain with oxygen-rich water. Star Stack's layered structure shielded their inner cells, but the outer layers bore the brunt of the oxygen's toxicity, sloughing off like dead skin. Yet in this harsh crucible, Star evolved. A new strain, Sadarfort, emerged in the deepest fissures. These microbes formed even denser colonies, their layers interwoven with mineral deposits from the surrounding rock, creating a crude armor against oxygen and acid rain. This adaptation slowed their growth, but made them nearly impervious to the lake's advance. Sadarfort's colonies, crusty and grey, dotted the plain like tiny fortresses, their hydrogen sulfide output a chemical counterattack against Calith's oxygen. The invisible observer might see Sadarfort as a symbol of defiance, where Calith adapted through flexibility. Sadarfort doubled down on resilience, anchoring themselves to the rock, but their strength came at a cost. Their colonies were static, unable to expand as quickly as Calith's mat. The frontier, where lake met plain, became a tense stalemate, neither side yielding. Above the plateau, the sky was a restless canvas. The oxygen Calith lux produced, though minuscule, was relentless, reacting with methane to thin the orange haze. At noon, the sky took on a bluish tint, a fleeting glimpse of the earth to come. Storms, fueled by the changing atmosphere, grew more frequent, their lightning splitting the clouds with jagged white arcs. The rains they brought were less acidic, diluted by the oxygen's influence, but still corrosive enough to scour the plain and stir the lake. One such storm swept across the plateau, its winds howling and its rains pounding the rock. In the lake, Calith lux's mat held firm, their efficient photosynthesis sustaining them through the dim light. On the plain, Sadarfort's mineral-armoured colonies weathered the deluge, their outer layers eroding but their cores intact. The storm reshaped the frontier, carving new channels where lake water flowed into Suthar's fissures, intensifying the chemical clash. As the storm cleared, the sky revealed a rare sight, a faint aurora, sparked by solar particles interacting with the oxygen-rich atmosphere. The invisible observer, gazing upward, might sense the planet's awakening. The sky was no longer a static veil, but a dynamic force, shaped by the life below. Earth was changing, its atmosphere a mirror of the struggle unfolding on the plateau. The frontier, where lake and plain met, was a chaotic blend of chemistries. Calith Lux's oxygen-rich waters lapped against Starfort's sulphurous fissures, creating a zone of constant flux. Here, the hybrids Calith-Sar persisted, their mixed traits allowing them to survive where neither parent could. But the frontier was unforgiving, and most Calith-Sar perished, their unstable cells unable to withstand the chemical tug-of-war. Yet, in this cauldron, a new hybrid emerged, a rare Calith-Sar cell, through a fortunate genetic exchange, developed a dual metabolism, capable of both photosynthesis and sulfur processing. These Calith-Sar dual, as we might name them, were a marvel of chance, a bridge between Calith's light-driven world and Star's chemical one. They were few, their survival precarious, but their existence hinted at a future where life could straddle multiple worlds. The invisible observer might see Calith-Sar dual as a spark of innovation. They were not dominant, not yet, but their dual nature allowed them to thrive in the frontier's chaos, forming small, patchy colonies where lake and plain collided. Their presence was a reminder that life, even in its simplest forms, was endlessly inventive, finding ways to endure where none seemed possible. Beneath the plateau, tectonic forces churned, their heat warming the springs that fed the lake. The increased warmth accelerated Calith Lux's metabolism, their oxygen output rising, but it also opened new vents on the plain, releasing sulfur that bolstered Starfort's colonies. The plateau was a living entity, its geology a partner in the microbial drama. Each quake, each vent, reshaped the battlefield, favouring first one side, then the other. A minor tremor rippled through the plateau, less violent than the last, but enough to stir the lake's sediment and crack new fissures on the plain. In the lake, Calith Lux adapted, their efficient photosynthesis allowing them to colonize the newly disturbed areas. On the plain, Sutherfort seized the new sulfur vents, their armoured colonies spreading into fresh territory. The tremor was a catalyst, pushing both sides to evolve or perish. Calith Lux's oxygen production was now a tide, slow but unstoppable. The lake's waters, saturated with oxygen, began to alter the surrounding air. The methane haze continued to thin, and the sky's bluish tint lingered longer each day. On the plain, Sutherfort's hydrogen sulfide struggled to keep pace, their colonies shrinking under the oxygen's pressure. The frontier became a testing ground, where only the most adaptable Calith-Sar dual could thrive. The invisible observer might see this as a turning point. Calith Lux's oxygen was not just a weapon, but a force of transformation, reshaping the planet's chemistry. The air, once thick with methane, was becoming something new, a precursor to the oxygen-rich atmosphere of later eras. Starfort, for all their resilience, were losing ground, their sulfur-based world under siege. As dusk settled over the plateau, the lake glowed faintly, its surface reflecting the fading sky. Calith Lux's mats pulsed with life, their oxygen reshaping the world. On the plain, Sutherfort's armoured colonies stood firm, defiant but beleaguered, in the frontier. Calith-Sar dual's fragile colonies hinted at a future where life could bridge divides. The horizon shimmered with volcanic glow and distant lightning, a reminder of Earth's restless nature. The invisible observer, gazing out, would see a planet alive with possibility. Calith, Suthar, and their hybrids were not just survivors, but architects of a world in the making. Their struggles a prelude to 1 billion years of change. 1 billion years ago, the basalt plateau stood as a stark monument to Earth's primordial churn. The shallow lake, vibrant with the green of Calith Lux's photosynthetic mat, pulsed with oxygen, reshaping the chemistry of both water and air. Beyond its shores, the cracked plain harboured Starfort's armoured colonies, their sulfur-based existence a defiant holdout against the encroaching oxygen tide at the frontier, where lake met plain. The hybrid Calith-Sar duel thrived in the chaotic blend of oxygen and sulfur. Their dual metabolism, a fragile bridge between two worlds. The plateau's restless geology, quakes, vents, and storms, kept the balance precarious, pushing life to adapt or perish now. As the planet's slow transformation accelerated, the saga of this ancient Earth unfolded further. The lake, fed by warm springs, shimmered under a sky increasingly tinged with blue. Calith Lux, with their enhanced photosynthetic efficiency, dominated the lake's depths, their mats spreading into areas once too murky for their kin. The oxygen they produced saturated the water, bubbling upward to thin the methane haze above. This slow alchemy was reshaping the atmosphere, each molecule a step toward a future Earth unrecognizable to this era's inhabitants. Within the mat, a new adaptation emerged. A cluster of Calith Lux developed a mechanism to cluster their cells into loose, spherical aggregates, increasing their surface area for capturing sunlight. These Calith sphere, as we might name them, were not truly multicellular, but hinted at complexity, their structure allowing them to float higher in the water column, closer to the sun's dim rays. This gave them an edge, enabling them to colonize the lake's surface, where light was strongest. The invisible observer, gazing into the lake, would see a dazzling transformation. The water, once a uniform green, now sparkled with floating patches of Calith sphere, their spherical forms glinting like tiny emeralds. The lake was no longer a static pool, but a dynamic ecosystem, its surface alive with movement as Calith sphere bobbed and swayed. Their oxygen output surged, accelerating the atmospheric shift and pressing harder against Starfort's plain. On the cracked plain, Starfort's armoured colonies stood as bastions of resilience. Their mineral-encrusted layers shielded them from the lake's oxygen. But the relentless advance of Calith's waters was eroding their domain. The frontier's brackish channels, carrying oxygen and Calith sphere's influence, seeped into Starfort's fissures, poisoning their sulfur-rich havens. The hydrogen sulfide they produced, once a potent counterforce, was weakening under the oxygen tide. Yet Starfort adapted in the deepest fissures, where oxygen's reach was weakest. A new strain emerged. These Sadar Deep, as we might call them, developed a metabolism that relied on rarer minerals, like iron compounds, leached from the basalt by acid rains. This shift allowed them to retreat into the plain's depths, where Calith's influence was minimal. Their colonies, now darker and more compact, clung to the rock like shadows, their hydrogen sulfide output reduced but sufficient to sustain them. The invisible observer might see Sathardeep's retreat as a strategic withdrawal. They were ceding the surface to Calith, but carving out a niche in the planet's underbelly. The plain, once a sprawling battlefield, was becoming a stronghold for Sathardeep. Their survival tied to the plateau's geological gifts, but their isolation came at a cost. Their colonies grew slower, their influence waning as Calith sphere's oxygen reshaped the world above. The sky above the plateau was no longer the orange veil of Earth's youth. Calith sphere's oxygen had thinned the methane haze, and at midday, the blue tint lingered, punctuated by wisps of water, vapor clouds. The atmosphere was in flux, its chemistry shifting as oxygen reacted with methane, sparking lightning more frequently. These storms, less acidic but more turbulent, churned the air, driving winds that scoured the plain and rippled the lake. A massive storm gathered on the horizon, its clouds dark and heavy. As it swept across the plateau, its winds whipped the lake into frothy waves, scattering Calith sphere's floating colonies. The rain, though less corrosive, was relentless, flooding the frontier and washing oxygen-rich water into Sathardeep's fissures. In the lake, Calith sphere adapted. their spherical forms buoyant enough to ride the waves. On the plain, Sulfur-Deep's mineral armor held, but the floodwaters eroded their outer layers, forcing them deeper underground. As the storm cleared, the sky revealed a startling clarity. The methane haze, now significantly reduced, allowed glimpses of stars at night, a sight alien to this ancient Earth. The invisible observer, looking upward, might sense a planet on the cusp of transformation. The sky was no longer a barrier, but a window, reflecting the changes driven by the life below. The frontier, where lake and plain collided, was a crucible of innovation. Calith-Sar-Dual, with their dual metabolism, thrived in the brackish chaos. Their colonies small but resilient, the storm's floodwaters had stirred the frontier, mixing oxygen and sulfur in new ways. In this turbulence, a new hybrid emerged, a rare Calith-Sar-Dual cell. Through another genetic exchange, developed a mechanism to store excess energy as chemical reserves, allowing it to survive periods of low light or sulfur scarcity. These Calith-Sar store, as we might name them, were a leap forward. Their energy reserves, giving them stability in the frontier's unpredictability. The invisible observer might see Calith-Sar store as a spark of resilience. Their ability to store energy allowed them to form denser colonies, their patches spreading across the frontier like tiny oases. They were not dominant, but their presence was a testament to life's adaptability. Bridging the gap between Calith's oxygen-driven world and Sathar's sulfur-based one, the frontier, once a battleground, was becoming a nursery for new forms of life. Beneath the plateau, tectonic forces stirred with increasing intensity. The heat from rising magma warmed the lake's springs, boosting Calithsphere's metabolism and oxygen output, but it also opened new vents on the plain, releasing iron-rich minerals that fueled the deep's growth. The plateau was a living force, its geology amplifying the microbial drama. Each vent, each tremor, reshaped the battlefield, creating opportunities and challenges for both sides. A deep quake rumbled through the plateau, cracking the lake's floor and releasing a surge of mineral-rich water for Calithsphere. This was a boon, their spherical forms colonizing the newly enriched areas. On the plain, the quake widened Sulfur-Deep's fissures, exposing fresh iron deposits that strengthened their colonies. The quake was a catalyst, pushing both Calith and Sulfur to adapt in the face of a changing world. Calithsphere's oxygen production was now a flood, saturating the lake and spilling into the atmosphere. The methane haze continued to thin, and the sky's blue deepened, a harbinger of the oxygen-rich world to come. On the plain, Sulfur-Deep's hydrogen sulfide was a fading whisper, their colonies confined to the deepest fissures. The frontier, dominated by Calith-Sar store's resilient patches, was shifting toward Calith's favor, the oxygen tide overwhelming Sathar's defenses. The invisible observer might see this as a dawn of sorts. Calithsphere's oxygen was not just reshaping the plateau, but setting the stage for a planetary revolution. The atmosphere, once a methane-choked veil, was becoming a cradle for new life. Sulfur-Deep, though resilient, were relics of an older Earth, their world shrinking as Caliths rose. As night fell, the plateau grew quiet, save for the wind and the distant glow of volcanoes. The lake, alive with Calithsphere's floating colonies, shimmered under the stars, their oxygen reshaping the air. On the plain, Sulfur-Deep's dark colonies clung to their fissures, defiant but diminished. In the frontier, Calith-Sar store's patches pulsed with potential, their energy reserves a spark of innovation. The horizon glowed with volcanic fire and faint auroras, a reminder of Earth's restless spirit. The invisible observer, gazing out, would see a planet in transformation, its life and geology intertwined in a dance of change. Calith, Sulfur, and their hybrids were not just survivors, but architects of a world yet to come. Their struggles a prelude to 1 billion years of evolution. 1 billion years ago, the basalt plateau stood as a testament to Earth's relentless churn, its scarred surface a canvas for life's earliest dramas. The shallow lake, vibrant with calith spheres floating, oxygen-producing colonies, dominated the landscape, its waters reshaping the atmosphere with every bubble. Beyond the lake, the deep clung to the depths of the cracked plain, their iron-fueled colonies a fading stronghold against the oxygen tide. At the frontier, calith sarstor thrived in the chaotic blend of oxygen and sulfur, their energy-storing metabolism a spark of resilience. The plateau's restless geology, quakes, vents, and storms kept the balance in flux, pushing life to evolve or vanish. Now, as the planet's transformation gained momentum, the saga of this ancient Earth deepened. The lake, fed by ever warmer springs, gleamed under a sky now distinctly blue at midday. Calith sphere, with their spherical, sunlight-hungry forms, had transformed the lake's surface into a mosaic of floating green patches. Their enhanced photosynthesis flooded the water with oxygen, some escaping to further erode the methane haze above. The atmosphere was shifting faster now, the orange veil of Earth's youth giving way to a clearer, bluer canopy, a silent promise of a world yet to come. Within the lake, a new mutation stirred. A cluster of calith sphere developed a crude form of chemical signaling, releasing faint molecular cues that coordinated their aggregation. These calith signal, as we might call them, were not sentient, but their signals allowed their spherical colonies to cluster more tightly, forming larger, more stable structures. These clusters, drifting like tiny rafts, captured sunlight more effectively and resisted the lake's turbulent currents. Their spread was rapid, their oxygen output surging as they colonized every corner of the lake. The invisible observer, peering into the lake, would see a dazzling evolution. The water shimmered with calith signals clustered colonies, their coordinated forms a step toward complexity. The lake was no longer just a cradle for life, but a thriving ecosystem, its surface pulsing with the rhythm of calith's triumph. Yet this dominance pressed harder against Sathar Deep's plain, threatening to overwhelm their last refuges. On the cracked plain, Sathar Deep's iron-fueled colonies huddled in the deepest fissures, their mineral-armoured forms a bulwark against the lake's oxygen. The frontier's brackish waters, carrying calith signals oxygen, had flooded many of their shallower strongholds, forcing a retreat. Their hydrogen sulfide output, once a potent counterforce, was now a faint whisper, overwhelmed by the oxygen tide. Yet Sathar Deep were not defeated. In the darkest fissures, where oxygen barely penetrated, a new adaptation emerged. A strain of Sathar Deep began to form symbiotic relationships with microscopic mineral deposits, incorporating iron particles into their cell walls to create a denser, more resilient armor. These Sathar, as we might name them, were slower to grow, but nearly impervious to oxygen's toxicity. Their colonies, now gleaming with metallic flecks, anchored themselves deep in the plain. Their metabolism, sustained by the plateau's dwindling sulfur and iron. The invisible observer might see Sathar as a final stand. Their symbiotic armor allowed them to survive where others perished. But their world was shrinking. The plain, once a vast domain, was now a network of deep refugees, isolated from the lake's relentless advance. Sathar survival was a testament to resilience, but their isolation marked them as relics of a fading era. Above the plateau, the sky was a vivid testament to change. Calith signals oxygen had thinned the methane haze to a mere wisp, and the blue tint now dominated, broken only by fleeting orange streaks at dawn and dusk. The atmosphere, once heavy with methane, was lighter, clearer, its chemistry reshaped by life below. Storms, now frequent and fierce, carried oxygen-rich rains that nourished the lake but eroded the plain's surface, exposing Sathar fissures to the elements. A massive storm loomed, its clouds swirling with a new intensity. As it swept across the plateau, its winds churned the lake into a froth, scattering caliph signals clusters, but also spreading their molecular signals, strengthening their coordination. The rain, oxygen-laden, flooded the frontier, seeping into Satharion's deep fissures. Caliph signal rode the storm's waves, their buoyant forms thriving, while Satharion's armoured colonies endured, their metallic walls resisting the deluge. As the storm cleared, the sky revealed a new phenomenon: faint, shimmering bands of light, not just auroras, but a glow born of oxygen's interaction with solar radiation. The invisible observer, gazing upward, might sense Earth's awakening. The sky was no longer a passive veil, but a dynamic force, reflecting the life-driven changes below. The planet was breathing, its atmosphere a living testament to Calith's quiet revolution. The frontier, where lake and plain collided, was a cauldron of possibility. Calith's Star, with their energy-storing metabolism, dominated the brackish zone, their colonies thriving amid the chemical chaos. The storm's floodwaters had stirred the frontier, mixing oxygen and sulfur in turbulent swirls. In this nexus, a new hybrid emerged. A rare Calith Star cell, through a genetic fluke, developed a mechanism to share its stored energy with nearby cells, forming loose networks of mutual support. These Calith Sarnet, as we might call them, were a leap toward cooperation. Their energy-sharing networks, stabilizing their colonies in the frontier's unpredictability. The invisible observer might see Calith Sarnet as a spark of unity. Their networked colonies, small but resilient, spread across the frontier, their energy sharing allowing them to withstand fluctuations in light and sulfur. They were not a new species, but their cooperative structure hinted at a future where life could rely on collective strength. The frontier, once a battleground, was now a cradle for innovation, where Calith Sarnet's networks bridged the divide between lake and plain. Beneath the plateau, tectonic forces roared with increasing vigor. Magma, rising closer to the surface, superheated the lake's springs, accelerating Calith signals metabolism and oxygen output. New vents opened on the plain, releasing iron and sulfur that sustained Satharion's deep colonies. The plateau was a living entity, its geology a catalyst for the microbial drama. Each quake, each vent reshaped the battlefield, creating niches for adaptation. A powerful quake shook the plateau, splitting the lake's floor and opening a deep crevice on the plain. In the lake, Calith signals clusters colonized the new mineral-rich waters, their signals coordinating larger, more stable rafts. On the plain, Satharion seized the new iron vents, their metallic colonies spreading into fresh fissures. The quake was a crucible, forcing both sides to evolve or perish in a world of constant change. Calith signals oxygen production was now a deluge, saturating the lake and flooding the atmosphere. The methane haze was nearly gone, the sky's blue deepening into a hue that would one day define Earth. On the plain, Satharion's hydrogen sulfide was a fading echo, their colonies confined to the deepest fissures. The frontier, dominated by Calith Sarnet's networked colonies, was firmly in Calith's favour, the oxygen flood overwhelming Sathar's defences. The invisible observer might see this as a turning point. Calith signals oxygen was not just a weapon, but a force of creation, reshaping Earth's chemistry and paving the way for new life. Satharion, though resilient, were shadows of a bygone era, their world shrinking as Caliths rose. The atmosphere, now oxygen-rich, was a cradle for possibilities yet unborn. As night fell, the plateau grew still, save for the wind and the distant rumble of volcanoes. The lake, alive with Calith signals clustered rafts, glowed under the stars, their oxygen reshaping the sky. On the plain, Satharion's metallic colonies clung to their deep fissures, defiant but diminished. In the frontier, Calith Sarnet's networked patches pulsed with cooperative life, their energy sharing a spark of innovation. The horizon shimmered with volcanic fire and faint, oxygen-driven glows, a reminder of Earth's restless spirit. The invisible observer, gazing out, would see a planet on the brink of a new era. Calith, Sathar, and their hybrids were not just survivors, but architects of a world in transformation. Their struggles are prelude to 1 billion years of evolution. 1 billion years ago, the basalt plateau stood as a crucible of change, its scarred surface bearing witness to the slow, relentless drama of Earth's earliest life. The shallow lake, vibrant with Calith signals oxygen-producing, clustered colonies, dominated the landscape, its waters reshaping the atmosphere into a clearer, bluer veil. Beyond the lake, Starion clung to the deepest fissures of the cracked plain, their iron-armoured colonies a fading bastion against the oxygen flood. At the frontier, Calith Sarnet thrived in the chaotic blend of oxygen and sulfur, their energy-sharing networks a spark of cooperative life. The plateau's restless geology, quakes, vents, and storms, kept the balance in flux, pushing life to adapt or vanish. Now, as Earth's transformation accelerated, the saga of this ancient world unfolded further. The lake, fed by superheated springs, shimmered under a sky now predominantly blue, its methane haze a fading memory. Calith signal, with their chemical signalling and clustered rafts, had transformed the lake into a thriving ecosystem. Their coordinated colonies floated like green islands, capturing sunlight with unmatched efficiency and flooding the water with oxygen. This oxygen surge not only saturated the lake, but also spilled into the atmosphere, altering its chemistry and driving storms of increasing intensity. Within the lake, a new mutation emerged. A cluster of Calith signal developed a rudimentary form of specialization, where some cells within their rafts focused on photosynthesis, while others stored excess energy, enhancing the colony's stability. These Calith special, as we might call them, were not multicellular in the modern sense, but their division of labor marked a leap toward complexity. The photosynthetic cells glowed brightly, while the storage cells, darker and denser, anchored the rafts, allowing them to withstand turbulent currents and sudden storms. The invisible observer, peering into the lake, would see a vibrant evolution. The water sparkled with Calith specials, specialized rafts, their coordinated structure a testament to life's ingenuity. The lake was no longer a mere habitat, but a dynamic system, its surface pulsing with the rhythm of Calith's dominance. Yet this triumph pushed the frontier closer to Starion's last refuges, threatening to erase their sulfur-based world. On the cracked plain, Starion's metallic colonies clung to the deepest fissures, their iron-encrusted walls a shield against the lake's oxygen flood. The frontier's brackish waters, carrying Calith specials oxygen, had infiltrated all but the most isolated crevices, forcing Starion into ever smaller strongholds. Their hydrogen sulfide output, once a potent defense, was now a faint trace, overwhelmed by the oxygen tide. Yet, in their isolation, Starion adapted. In the deepest, darkest fissures, where oxygen's reach was weakest, a new strain emerged. These Sadakor, as we might name them, developed a metabolism that relied on anaerobic fermentation of rare organic compounds leached from the basalt. This shift allowed them to survive in near-complete isolation, their colonies shrinking to tiny, dense clusters that glowed faintly with bioluminescent byproducts. Starcore were relics, their world reduced to pockets of resistance deep within the plain. The invisible observer might see Starcore as a desperate last stand. Their bioluminescent colonies, hidden in the plateau's depths, were a flicker of defiance against Calith's dominance. The plain, once a vast battlefield, was now a graveyard of Star's former glory, its surface ceded to the lake's advance. Starcore's survival was a testament to resilience, but their isolation marked them as ghosts of an older Earth. Above the plateau, the sky was a vivid reflection of Earth's transformation. Calith Special's oxygen had nearly erased the methane haze, leaving a deep blue canopy broken only by wisps of water vapor clouds. The atmosphere, now oxygen-rich, crackled with energy, its storms fiercer and more frequent. Lightning split the sky with blinding arcs, and winds howled across the plateau, carrying oxygen-laden rains that nourished the lake but scoured the plain. A colossal storm gathered, its clouds towering like mountains as it swept across the plateau. Its winds churned the lake into a maelstrom, scattering Caliph Special's rafts, but also spreading their chemical signals, strengthening their coordination. The rain, heavy with oxygen, flooded the frontier, seeping into Starcore's deep fissures. Caliph Special's specialized rafts rode the storm's waves, their storage cells anchoring them against the chaos. In the plain's depths, Starcore's bioluminescent colonies endured, their anaerobic metabolism shielding them from the oxygen's bite. As the storm cleared, the sky revealed a new spectacle: vibrant auroras, their colors intensified by the oxygen-rich atmosphere. The invisible observer, gazing upward, might sense Earth's fury and vitality. The sky was no longer a passive veil, but a dynamic force, its storms and lights a mirror of the life-driven changes below. The planet was alive, its atmosphere a testament to Caliph's relentless surge. The frontier, where lake and plain collided, was a nexus of innovation. Caliph Sarnet, with their energy-sharing networks, dominated the brackish zone, their colonies thriving amid the chemical chaos. The storm's floodwaters had stirred the frontier, mixing oxygen and sulfur in turbulent eddies. In this convergence, a new hybrid emerged. A rare Caliph Sarnet cell, through a genetic fluke, developed a mechanism to regulate its energy sharing, allowing it to form larger, more stable networks. These Caliph Sar-link, as we might call them, were a marvel of cooperation, their interconnected colonies resembling crude proto-tissues. The invisible observer might see Caliph Sar-link as a spark of unity. Their linked networks, spreading across the frontier, were resilient to environmental swings, their regulated energy sharing allowing them to thrive where others faltered. They were not a new species, but their complex structure hinted at a future where life could rely on collective organization. The frontier, once a chaotic battleground, was now a cradle for cooperation, where Caliph Sar-link's networks bridged the divide between lake and plain. Beneath the plateau, tectonic forces roared with unrelenting power. Magma, rising ever closer to the surface, superheated the lake's springs, accelerating Caliph Special's metabolism and oxygen output. New vents opened on the plain, releasing organic compounds that fueled Starcore's fermentation. The plateau was a living force, its geology amplifying the microbial drama. Each quake, each vent reshaped the battlefield, creating niches for adaptation. A massive quake shook the plateau, splitting the lake's floor and opening a deep chasm on the plain. In the lake, Caliph Special's rafts colonized the mineral-rich waters, their specialized cells forming larger, more stable clusters. On the plain, Starcore seized the new organic vents, their bioluminescent colonies spreading into fresh fissures. The quake was a crucible, forcing both sides to evolve in a world of constant upheaval. Caliph Special's oxygen production was now a torrent, saturating the lake and flooding the atmosphere. The methane haze was gone, replaced by a deep blue sky that shimmered with auroras. On the plain, Starcore's bioluminescent glow was a fading spark, their colonies confined to the plateau's deepest recesses. The frontier, dominated by Caliph Sar-link's networked colonies, was firmly in Caliph's favor, the oxygen epoch overwhelming Sathar's defenses. The invisible observer might see this as the dawn of a new age. Caliph Special's oxygen was not just a weapon, but a force of creation, reshaping Earth's chemistry and laying the foundation for new life. Starcore, though resilient, were relics of a bygone world, their anaerobic existence a whisper in the face of Caliph's roar. The atmosphere, now a cradle for oxygen-dependent life, was a promise of possibilities yet to come. As night fell, the plateau grew quiet, save for the wind and the distant rumble of volcanoes. The lake, alive with Caliph specials clustered rafts, glowed under the auroras, their oxygen reshaping the sky. On the plain, star-cores bioluminescent colonies flickered in their deep fissures. Defiant but diminished, in the frontier, Caliph Sarlink's networked patches pulsed with cooperative life, their regulated networks a spark of innovation. The horizon shimmered with volcanic fire and vibrant auroras, a reminder of Earth's restless spirit. The invisible observer, gazing out, would see a planet in the throes of transformation, Caliph, Sadar, and their hybrids were not just survivors, but architects of a world reborn. Their struggles are prelude to 1 billion years of evolution. 1 billion years ago, the basalt plateau stood as a monument to Earth's relentless transformation. Its scarred surface, a stage for the quiet drama of primordial life. The shallow lake, vibrant with Caliph specials oxygen producing, specialized rafts, dominated the landscape, its waters reshaping the atmosphere into a deep blue canopy. Beyond the lake, Satharkor clung to the deepest fissures of the cracked plain, their bioluminescent, anaerobic colonies, a fading echo of a sulfur-driven world. At the frontier, Caliph Sarlink thrived in the chaotic blend of oxygen and sulfur, their energy-sharing networks a beacon of cooperative life. The plateau's restless geology, quakes, vents, and storms kept the world in flux, pushing life to evolve or vanish. Now, as Earth's oxygen epoch surged toward a tipping point, the saga of this ancient world neared its crescendo. The lake, fed by scalding springs, gleamed under a sky now a vivid blue, its last traces of methane haze dissolved by Caliph Special's relentless oxygen output. Their specialized rafts, with photosynthetic cells glowing brightly and storage cells anchoring their structure, had transformed the lake into a thriving, oxygen-saturated ecosystem. The water sparkled with their clustered colonies, floating like green archipelagos, their coordinated signals creating a rhythm that pulsed through the lake's depths. The oxygen they produced not only flooded the atmosphere, but also altered the water's chemistry, making it inhospitable to all but the most adaptable. Within the lake, a new mutation emerged. A cluster of Caliph special developed a primitive form of motility, using chemical gradients to propel their rafts toward areas of higher sunlight or nutrients. These Caliph move, as we might call them, were not sentient, but their ability to drift purposefully gave them an edge, allowing them to colonize new springs and shallows where others faltered. Their rafts, larger and more dynamic, spread across the lake, their oxygen output reaching unprecedented levels. The invisible observer, peering into the lake, would see a dazzling pinnacle of evolution. The water shimmered with Caliph Move's motile rafts, their purposeful drift a testament to life's adaptability. The lake was no longer a passive cradle, but a vibrant, self-sustaining system, its surface alive with the dance of Caliph's triumph. Yet this dominance pressed ever harder against Satharkor's last refuges, threatening to extinguish their anaerobic world. On the cracked plain, Satharkor's bioluminescent colonies flickered in the deepest fissures, their anaerobic fermentation of organic compounds a fragile lifeline against the oxygen flood. The frontier's brackish waters, carrying Caliph Move's oxygen, had penetrated all but the most isolated crevices, forcing Satharkor into near total isolation. Their bioluminescent glow, once a faint beacon, was now a desperate flicker, their colonies shrinking under the weight of an oxygen-rich world. Yet, in their twilight, Satharkor adapted. In the deepest oxygen-starved fissures, a new strain emerged. These Sathar last, as we might name them, developed a metabolism that scavenged trace organic compounds from decaying Sathar colonies, forming a crude cycle of recycling. Their colonies, now microscopic and nearly invisible, clung to the rock like faint smears, their bioluminescence reduced to a barely perceptible pulse, so the last were survivors, but their world was a shadow of its former self. The invisible observer might see Sathar last as a poignant end. Their recycling metabolism allowed them to persist in the plateau's depths. But their isolation was absolute. The plain, once a sulfur-driven battlefield, was now a tomb, its surface ceded to Calith's oxygen tide. Sathar last's survival was a whisper of defiance, but their fading glow marked them as relics of a world overtaken. Above the plateau, the sky was a vibrant testament to Earth's rebirth. Calith move's oxygen had transformed the atmosphere into a deep blue, alive with water vapor clouds and frequent auroras. The storms, now a constant presence, roared with unprecedented fury, their lightning splitting the sky and their winds scouring the plateau. The oxygen-rich rains nourished the lake but eroded the plain, exposing Thalast's fissures to the elements. A cataclysmic storm gathered, its clouds black and towering. As it swept across the plateau, its winds churned the lake into a tempest, scattering Calith move's rafts but also spreading their chemical signals, enhancing their motility. The rain, heavy with oxygen, flooded the frontier, seeping into Sathar last's deep fissures. Calith move's motile rafts navigated the chaos, their purposeful drift allowing them to colonize new shallows in the plain's depths. Sathar last's recycling colonies endured, their faint glow persisting against the oxygen's assault. As the storm cleared, the sky revealed a breathtaking sight, auroras that danced in vibrant greens and blues, their intensity a reflection of the oxygen-rich atmosphere. The invisible observer, gazing upward, might sense Earth's roar. The sky was a living force, its storms and lights a mirror of the life-driven changes below. The planet was not just alive but thriving, its atmosphere a testament to Calith's unstoppable surge. The frontier, where lake and plain converged, was a crucible of innovation. Calith-Sar link, with their regulated energy-sharing networks, dominated the brackish zone, their colonies thriving amid the chemical chaos. The storm's floodwaters had stirred the frontier, mixing oxygen and sulfur in turbulent swirls. In this fusion, a new hybrid emerged, a rare Calith-Sar link cell, through a genetic fluke, developed a mechanism to integrate its network with nearby colonies, forming interconnected clusters that shared resources across distances. These Calith-Sar web, as we might call them, were a marvel of cooperation, their web-like networks resembling primitive ecosystems. The invisible observer might see Calith-Sar web as a spark of connectivity. Their interconnected clusters, spreading across the frontier, were resilient to environmental swings, their resource sharing stabilizing the brackish zone. They were not a new species, but their web-like structure hinted at a future where life could form complex, interdependent systems. The frontier, once a chaotic nexus, was now a cradle for collaboration, where Calith-Sar web's networks bridged the divide between lake and plain. Beneath the plateau, tectonic forces reached a fever pitch. Magma, now dangerously close to the surface, superheated the lake's springs, accelerating Calith move's metabolism and oxygen output. New vents opened on the plain, releasing organic compounds that sustained Thalast's recycling metabolism. The plateau was a living entity, its geology a catalyst for the microbial drama. Each quake, each vent, reshaped the battlefield, creating fleeting niches for survival. A colossal quake shook the plateau, splitting the lake's floor and collapsing parts of the plain's fissures. In the lake, Calith move's motile rafts colonized the mineral-rich waters, their purposeful drift forming vast, interconnected networks. On the plain, Thalast's recycling colonies survived in the deepest crevices, their faint glow persisting amid the rubble. The quake was a crucible, forcing both sides to adapt in a world on the brink of transformation. Calith move's oxygen production was now a flood, saturating the lake and transforming the atmosphere. The deep blue sky, alive with auroras and storms, was a testament to their dominance. On the plain, Starlast's bioluminescent flicker was a dying ember, their colonies confined to the plateau's deepest recesses. The frontier, dominated by Caliph Sarweb's interconnected clusters, was firmly in Calith's favour. The oxygen apex, overwhelming Sathar's last defences. The invisible observer might see this as the climax of an epoch. Caliph moves oxygen was not just a force, but a foundation, reshaping Earth's chemistry and paving the way for new life. As the last, though resilient, were shadows of a lost world. Their anaerobic existence, a faint whisper in the face of Calith's triumph. The atmosphere, now a cradle for oxygen-dependent life, was a promise of a future yet to unfold. As night fell, the plateau grew still, save for the wind and the distant rumble of volcanoes. The lake, alive with Caliph moves motile rafts, glowed under the auroras, their oxygen reshaping the sky. On the plain, Sadalast's faint colonies flickered in their deep crevices, defiant but fading. In the frontier, Caliph Sarweb's interconnected clusters pulsed with collaborative life, their web-like networks a spark of innovation. The horizon shimmered with volcanic fire and vibrant auroras, a reminder of Earth's restless spirit. The invisible observer, gazing out, would see a planet at the dawn of a new era. Caliph, Sthar, and their hybrids were not just survivors, but architects of a world reborn. Their struggles a prelude to 1 billion years of evolution. 1 billion years ago, the basalt plateau stood as a silent witness to Earth's primordial transformation, its scarred surface a testament to the relentless drama of life's earliest forms. The shallow lake, vibrant with Caliph moves oxygen-producing, motile rafts dominated the landscape, its waters reshaping the atmosphere into a deep blue canopy alive with auroras. Beyond the lake, Starlast flickered in the deepest fissures of the cracked plain, their bioluminescent, recycling colonies, a fading whisper of a sulfur-driven world. At the frontier, Caliph Sarweb thrived in the chaotic blend of oxygen and sulfur, their interconnected networks a beacon of cooperative life. The plateau's restless geology, quakes, vents, and storms had sculpted this world, pushing life to evolve or vanish. Now, as Earth's oxygen epoch reached its zenith, the saga of this ancient world drew to a close, leaving a legacy that would echo through the eons. The lake, fed by scalding springs, shimmered under a sky now a radiant blue. Its oxygen-rich atmosphere, a stark departure from the methane-choked haze of Earth's youth. Caliph move, with their motile rafts and specialized cells, had transformed the lake into a thriving ecosystem, their purposeful drift colonizing every shallow and spring. Their photosynthetic cells glowed with vibrant green, while their storage cells anchored their rafts, creating a dynamic network that pulsed with life. The oxygen they produced saturated the water and flooded the atmosphere, reshaping the planet's chemistry and setting the stage for a future unimagined by these simple microbes. Within the lake, a final mutation emerged. A cluster of Caliph move developed a mechanism to encase their rafts in a thin mineralized layer. Drawn from the lake's dissolved silicates, these Caliph shell, as we might call them, were not sentient, but their mineralized shells protected their rafts from storms and chemical swings, allowing them to persist in the lake's most turbulent zones. Their rafts, now faintly gleaming with silicate sheen, spread across the lake, their oxygen output stabilizing the ecosystem and cementing Caliph's dominance. The invisible observer, peering into the lake, would see a crowning achievement. The water sparkled with Caliph shells' armored rafts, their mineralized forms a testament to life's resilience. The lake was no longer a crucible of struggle, but a beacon of stability, its surface alive with the rhythm of Caliph's legacy. Their oxygen had not only conquered the lake, but also reshaped the planet, pressing the final blow against Satharlast's dwindling refuges. On the cracked plain, Sartholast's bioluminescent colonies flickered in the deepest, oxygen-starved fissures, their recycling metabolism a fragile thread against the oxygen flood. The frontier's brackish waters, carrying calyth shells' oxygen, had penetrated even their deepest crevices, leaving no sanctuary. Their faint glow, once a defiant pulse, was now a barely perceptible glimmer, their colonies reduced to microscopic smears on the rock. Sartholast were survivors, but their world had vanished. In their final moments, Sartholast adapted one last time. A rare strain, Sartholast, emerged in a single, isolated fissure, developing a dormant state that encased their cells in organic cysts, preserving them against the oxygen's toxicity. These cysts, too small to see, drifted into the rock's pores, awaiting a future where conditions might favour their revival. Sartholast were not a victory, but a farewell. Their dormancy, a silent hope for a world that might never return. The invisible observer might see Sartholast as a poignant close. Their cysts, hidden in the plateau's depths, were a whisper of endurance, a final act of defiance against calyth's oxygen tide. The plain, once a sulfur-driven battlefield, was now a silent graveyard, its fissures a tomb for Sartholast's lost era. Their legacy was not survival, but persistence, a seed buried in time's vast expanse. Above the plateau, the sky was a vibrant hymn to Earth's rebirth. Calyth shells' oxygen had transformed the atmosphere into a deep, shimmering blue, alive with water vapor clouds, frequent storms, and dazzling auroras. The oxygen-rich air crackled with energy, its storms a symphony of lightning and wind that reshaped the plateau's surface. The rains, now pure and oxygen-laden, nourished the lake but scoured the plain, sealing Sartholast's fissures beneath layers of eroded rock. A final storm gathered, its clouds vast and electric. As it swept across the plateau, its winds churned the lake into a froth, scattering calyth shells' rafts, but also spreading their silicate shells, strengthening their resilience. The rain, heavy with oxygen, flooded the frontier, burying Sartholast's cysts under sediment. Calyth shells' armoured rafts rode the storm's waves, their mineralized shells gleaming under the lightning's flash. In the plain's depths, Sartholast's cysts lay dormant, their faint hope preserved in the rock. As the storm cleared, the sky revealed a breathtaking vista, auroras that danced in vibrant greens, blues, and purples, their brilliance a celebration of the oxygen-rich atmosphere. The invisible observer, gazing upward, might sense Earth's triumph. The sky was a living canvas, its lights and storms a reflection of the life-driven changes below. The planet was reborn, its atmosphere a testament to Calyth's quiet revolution. The frontier, where lake and plain once clashed, was now a zone of harmony. Calyth's web, with their interconnected resource-sharing networks, dominated the brackish zone, their colonies a model of cooperative life. The storm's floodwaters had stabilized the frontier, blending oxygen and sulfur into a balanced chemistry. In this harmony, a final hybrid emerged, a rare Calyth web cell. Through a genetic leap, developed a mechanism to integrate its network with Calyth shells' rafts, forming hybrid clusters that combined motility, resource sharing, and mineralized protection. These Calyth fuse, as we might call them, were a pinnacle of collaboration, their clusters resembling primitive ecosystems. The invisible observer might see Calyth fuse as a spark of unity. Their hybrid clusters, spreading across the frontier, were resilient to environmental swings, their integrated networks stabilizing the zone. They were not a new species, but their complex structure was a blueprint for a future where life could thrive through interdependence. The frontier, once a chaotic crucible, was now a sanctuary of collaboration, where Calyth fuses clusters bridged the legacy of lake and plain. Beneath the plateau, tectonic forces slowed, their magma retreating from the surface. The lake's springs cooled slightly, stabilizing Calyth shells' metabolism and oxygen output. On the plain, the last vent sealed, entombing serene cysts in the rock. The plateau, once a restless force, was now a silent guardian. Its geology, a foundation for the microbial legacy above. The quakes had ceased, but their impact lingered, etched in the lake's depths and the plain's fissures. A gentle tremor, the last of its kind, rippled through the plateau, stirring the lake's waters and settling the plain's sediment in the lake. Calith shells' armoured rafts colonised the final shallows, their silicate shells gleaming under the blue sky. In the frontier, Calith Sarfuse's hybrid clusters thrived, their networks a testament to life's ingenuity. The tremor was a final note, sealing the plateau's role in Earth's ancient drama. Calith shell's oxygen production was now a constant, saturating the lake and sustaining the atmosphere. The deep blue sky, alive with auroras and gentle storms, was a monument to their dominance. On the plain, Sartharen's dormant cysts lay silent, their legacy a faint hope buried in time. The frontier, dominated by Calith Sarfuse's hybrid clusters, was a testament to collaboration, the oxygen eternity uniting lake and plain in a new equilibrium. The invisible observer might see this as the birth of an eternity. Calith shell's oxygen was not just a force but a legacy, reshaping Earth's chemistry and paving the way for life yet to come. Southern, though dormant, were a reminder of the planet's ancient struggles. Their cysts, a seed for a future unknown. The atmosphere, now a cradle for oxygen-dependent life, was a promise of a world reborn. As night fell, the plateau grew still, save for the whisper of wind and the distant glow of a cooling volcano. The lake, alive with Calith shell's armoured rafts, shimmered under the auroras, their oxygen sustaining the sky. In the frontier, Calith Sarfuse's hybrid clusters pulsed with collaborative life, their networks a spark of unity beneath the plain. Southern's cysts lay dormant, their faint hope a whisper in the rock. The horizon glowed with vibrant auroras, a reminder of Earth's eternal spirit. The invisible observer, gazing out, would see a planet transformed, its life and geology intertwined in a dance of creation. Calith, Sithar, and their hybrids were not just survivors but architects of a world eternal. Their struggles a prelude to 1 billion years of life. This was Earth, 1 billion years ago, a crucible of beginnings, a beacon of possibilities, a legacy that would endure through time's vast expanse.